I think.
Yeah. You know how Ecamm changes things from time to time. But we are allegedly live right now. So
Okay.
yeah. This was a good topic though. You picked a good one for this one. I think
Oh,
did you
good.
pick this one? No, I think it was a combination of you and Deborah. Was it Deborah? Yeah, in the community, because she had made a comment on that she was reworking images, and that triggered something in my head. And then I mentioned it, and then you're like, "Yeah, that should be a topic." Boom, and here we go. 2 weeks later, it is the topic, and we got a bunch of good submissions too.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, we got some good stuff.
You know what? You put one in there that was really interesting to see the what you thought was good then and what you think is good now. Do you have any interesting revelations during that experiment of reworking the shot?
Um, I mean, my big thing, like with the wedding images, is always highlights and shadows. It's one thing to create an image, for a wedding client. It's different to create one to be critically, have a critical eye for competition. So for me, it's always about highlights and shadows and having a good range of tonal range in the image. So, and then of course, way back then when I did that image, I wasn't able to do sky replacement. So I think that was kind of the big like, oh, I can put some clouds in there, which I wasn't able to do way back in the day. Yeah, when I started shooting digital.
Yeah. Well, you kind of could do it, just not as successfully as you can now. I think sky
Yeah.
replacement was always possible, right? It was just with varying degrees of difficulty. But
It,
now,
it was
yeah,
hard. I mean, like, if you go back to what, like 2010, 2012, 2015, I mean, to do a sky replacement meant you had to manually mask around trees and objects and people and stuff. It wasn't super
yeah,
easy, and auto select didn't work really well, and it looked horrible, and you know it was
yeah,
hard. So I just didn't do it. It was just too much work.
yeah, yeah. It was either make a hand selection, or if you had some chops with using channels and selecting a channel for the area you're trying to select, and then
Yeah.
make that channel into the mask, and then refine it and then blur it a little and all that stuff, and you
No, too
still didn't
much.
have a good. Yeah, it still wouldn't be in. You could still tell that something was done there, and now, yeah, you can. I don't, even around trees or hair or kind of high frequency data areas like that, it doesn't. It's hard to tell
Mhm.
unless you
Yeah.
unless you really know and you like pay attention to the direction of light and where the sun was and this and that should be like or reflections on a body of water. Yeah, there's telltale signs, but even that is they're figuring that out and fixing that
Yeah.
too. So yeah, it's crazy,
Yeah,
crazy.
and I do it quite a bit now. I mean, I do quite a bit of sky replacements where, if I'm the finals for like my delivery images might have a low angle shot like what I'm showing here. It I can drop clouds in there and reduce them to like 10 or 20% transparency, and they're just barely there. I can do that in like less than a minute. So I can do
Yeah,
5 or 6 images in the series. Like before, that was a 10, 12, 15-minute process to make it look natural. That I
yeah,
couldn't do that. I couldn't do 5 images like that.
yeah. And now it's boom, bada boom.
Yeah.
It's right out.
And my big revelation on going back and editing older images is always surprising how good the files are from the camera, and how well that the modern software is able to use those images, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
always thought way back in the day, like, because I started shooting with a Nikon D1X and I played with a 10D, and we're like, oh my God, someday these cameras have to get better. And we didn't really realize that it was kind of software.
Yeah,
It wasn't the
yeah.
sensors, the cameras were doing a really good job. It
That's
was
right.
the
Yeah.
software to pull that data out of the image. So that's always surprising to me.
Yeah, and there were many signs that that was the case, but I remember having conversations in the early days with Capture One users and how their raw processing engine or the raw processing engine in Capture One was allegedly superior to the one that's in Camera Raw slash Lightroom. So
Right.
it was, yeah, if it's pulling out so much more detail and all the things. And yeah, and that was the first clue of like, okay, if it's able to synthesize the exact same data better over here, then the
Right.
magic is in the post processing versus not some of the magic is in the post processing versus in the capture. So,
Right.
you know,
Yep.
I don't know. And then fast forward to today, right? So if you were making great images back then and we were just inhibited or restricted by the post processing tool, and now the I would argue that the raw files that like your camera, the Z9, can generate these days, I wonder what's in those files that you're not seeing, right? You're like, man,
Good.
that the raw processing engine I was using in 2023, says Troy of 2029, right? That was crap.
Yeah.
Look at this. I
Yeah.
can pull all this stuff out of there now. So
That's not
yeah,
that's so true though. I mean, that's absolutely true. And so save those files, man. Don't throw them
yeah.
away, you know.
Yeah,
Keep
yeah.
them.
It's like that sky was blown out. I can't use that shot. And now you can just bring the sky back and see all the
Yep.
detail. Yeah.
Yep.
So crazy. Cool. Oh, before we do this, we don't have that many. Well, we got a good number of images to go through. But I want to put the bug in your ear to be thinking about what the next critique topic is going to
Got it.
be as we mark. You got it already? You did your
Got
homework?
it.
All right.
It's already written
Good.
down.
Yay. Cool. All right. I have no idea what this topic is, so we will. If it's bad, blame it on this guy. All right, let's dive into this here critique. And thanks everybody for watching this live. The folks that are in there, a couple of folks are hanging out with us. Ladudarina's in there, and Phil's in there. Hopefully, get a couple of more members showing up shortly. But let's dive in. All right, here is the community, the photo critiques area. So we're in the rework. Let me just go back and make sure we're reloaded correctly. All right, and appropriately, Deborah Cole is the first one up since this was kind of driven by her. So this is the original. So let's see what she did here. Okay, so we've got this original, and then this guy. It looks like she's got a close up of this guy, and then she reworked it to this. This is the final. Let me see if she's guided us in any way. So 5 years, all the way back in my files. I did not edit my images. Didn't have time. I want to learn. So she was not editing back then. I look back as 5 years when I began to use Lightroom, the camera plus the trusty old X-T3 in 1855, shooting in JPEG and color and then converting. Number 1 is out of camera. Number 2 is with edits. And number 3 is with recent edits. Okay, straight out of camera, this guy. Right? Then with some edits here. Then with recent edits here. You know what's interesting about
Yeah.
this too? We touched on this a little bit, but it's interesting. Yeah, these raw processing engines change, but so do we. So do our kind of flesh-based raw processing engines and how we perceive what we think is good, what's even compositionally and all that. It changes over time along with the software. So she may be thinking something completely different in 2023 than she was 5 years ago. So yeah, interesting. So what say you about these three, Troy?
These are great, and that's a really good point that you make too. I mean, if you ever look up like Moonrise over Hernandez and look like by
Mm-hmm.
Ansel Adams, you'll see there's a famous photo of where he's got like 4 iterations of that photo, and over time, as his vision and his interpretation of that scene changed, he re-edited it, and as technology changed, and printing technology and tonal range and his ability to manipulate, they change. So that's kind of what this is about. Um, and I always kind of think like when we do these kind of images and we take photos out in the world, it's kind of like that first photo. It's kind of what we're emotionally inspired to create. Like, ooh, I love the wall and the door and this guy walking by and the sign. But in reality, like there's something more in there that drew us in, and that's where the edits come in, right? It's like, oh, she was obviously drawn to the person and the doorway and the artwork on the wall, and that's how she edited it the first time. And then over time now in history, like she looks back and says, ooh, I did like the building and I did like all the the wires and the structure. and then being able to pull out those highlights and details and textures even better. So I'm a big fan of the final edit in this one, and I think she did a good job bringing out highlight and shadow detail and tonal range and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
great
yeah,
image.
so much better. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the composition, of course, right? It's great, but you can see the little nuances that she paid attention to when she was editing this. You know, the black and white processing is great. The way that she handled the vignetting or added the vignetting in here is great. And one of the things I was looking at was here on the original, this little sign up here, right, which takes you out of the
Yeah,
image and takes you away from the text that she wants you to look at. Of course, it's gone here, but it's definitely gone on this one, and I'm drawn directly over here. You know, it's interesting from a compositional standpoint. Having leading the subject out of the frame is we I mean, we don't say don't do that, or you know, in traditional photography, I guess we don't say don't do that, but at the same time, you know, it's not really standard practice to have the person kind of walking towards it almost out of the frame. Usually you'd want to put them on the left here, kind of coming into the frame. And you know, no hard and fast rules, of course, but I love this, the way that it adds that tension, you know, and how everything's kind of pointing off the right side of the frame. Even this illustration and the scissors and the words in this arrow and this person, they're all pointing out. So it makes this side of the frame heavy. I think in my brain, if I was to have cropped this or post processed this, I would have been drawn incorrectly. I would have been drawn to making this part over here the picture, right? Just this area here, and maybe cropping in a little bit like this, making it a vertical. So all this becomes a picture. But her choice to add all this detail in there gives it much more of a sense of place, and it grounds the image and brings you more into it, makes you want to explore it more. So yeah, really good
right.
job.
Right. And you're the way that you said you'd be drawn in is very much how she did her first edit, right? She did that tight vertical crop. But what I find really interesting about this is that I think the face that's painted on the wall is actually our main subject. I think that's what you look at the most. I think that's where you're kind of drawn, and the guy walking by is secondary, right? Even though we know he's the human in the picture on the wall, but it's a face, right? We're drawn to that face. So there's a lot
Yeah,
of cool juxtaposition things happening in here. So yeah, I agree with
yeah,
everything you said. Makes perfect sense.
yeah. Really good, really cool shot, Deborah. Thanks for sharing this one. Very nice. All right, moving along. I don't want to miss anybody. I think Rick Killboy is up next. 2014 air show by the Thunderbirds, United States Air Force Thunderbirds. I've shot these guys before. Shot it with a Nikon D7 100. Did you have that camera? You had that one, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah, that's
did.
a
Yeah.
beautiful camera. Yeah. With a 55-200 at f16, straight out of camera, original edit, current edit. Okay, here's our straight out of camera right here. Not a bad shot to begin with, right? And then here's the original edit. Okay, I like it. Symmetry's good. And then the final edit.
Ta-da.
Ta-da! Look at that. See? That's the shot right there. Yeah, that is a cool shot. Very cool. Yeah, let's just go back and look at these. Look at that progression. So straight out of
Right.
camera, you know, and obviously Rick probably never intended anyone to see this shot, so we never would have seen it. But then we take it here. Now we went panoramic. We got it wide. We can see our sky. Our sky is much more vivid. He brought that out, cropped out all that foreground stuff that was taken away from the shot. Still, it was missing something. Now we can see the hills better. He added some clouds in the sky. It's a little more contrasty, and these planes are popping more. Look at that. So here,
Right.
the little heavy-handed on the contrast. I think I feel like they're getting lost a little bit with the runway and the hills in the background. But here, they're clearly the subject of the shot. So really, really good work. What do you think?
I agree. I love what Rick. I love what you've done with the shot, and I agree with what Frederick is saying. What I've noticed is that the tonality got better in the final image, which is fantastic. Your composition improved. I like that you left a little bit more runway or tarmac or whatever in the foreground in your final edit versus your primary edit. I felt like the planes were too tight to the bottom. And I like the fact that you add a little bit more space there. Two things on this image is one, since you added the clouds, I don't think it's a good idea to add a cloud in the upper right hand corner touching the border. You know,
Mm.
you don't need that there. And second, I would lean into darkening the mountains a little bit. Um, not
Hmm.
not a ton, just a tad. I think that the
So
saturation
somewhere
in the
between here and there, because they were dark here,
yeah,
but not
yeah,
this dark and not that bright.
yeah. I think that there's some wonderful colors in there to contrast against the blue sky. I mean, if you don't, it's not a huge difference. But I think you did such a good job highlighting the planes, bringing out that highlight and shadow detail, and the addition of the clouds and the composition is a wonderful. So that's a great, great rework.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, I do agree with this little UFO up here in the
It's
upper right hand corner.
it's almost like he put it there just for us, you know.
Yeah, let's see if they notice it. Say something. Yeah, really cool though. Very cool. And of course, the United States Air Force Thunderbirds are the best, aerial performing team out there, bar none. Sorry, Navy. get, some, get some hate mail for that. I'm just saying, it's the Thunderbirds. Come on, what are you gonna do? Cool. All right, thank you, Rick. All right. Craig, blah, blah. Make sure I'm not missing anybody here. Oh, what did Craig put in here? Oh, look at
You
that.
did.
Almost missed it, Craig Stampley. Almost missed
You
it.
missed.
Did I miss anybody
Yeah.
else?
No, no, no. I'm just
Okay.
making sure that I'm doing the same thing, clicking on the show more, because
Yeah,
that's
yeah. Yeah, that'll get you. Craig says the oldest folder I have saved is from 2006. Back then I had a Canon 350D Rebel T2, I think, and a few lenses that he bought secondhand on eBay. The original and now reworked images are from the Presidential Palace in Abu Dhabi, and given the opportunity, I would have framed this up far more symmetrically, not even close. Okay, so let's look at these. So here is the original, I'm guessing. Yep, there's the original.
yeah.
So yeah, So I'm wondering, did he say this was the original straight out of camera, or was this the original that he had already processed and was prepared to share?
Yeah, it doesn't really
Um,
show. I'm gonna guess that's straight out of camera because the cameras
yeah.
are highly sensitive to red light, so that makes sense.
Mm.
And if it wasn't white balanced, it'd still.
Yeah,
So
yeah, because this is what this would be daylight balance. Is this what we're looking? Because it's so warm.
yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yep,
Okay.
absolutely. Which is fine. I mean, I shoot everything I shoot at like 5200 Kelvin. I set it on the camera, so it's not actually 5200 Kelvin, but that's the white point on the camera. And I leave it there. And so, when you go in outside, it's a little bit warm. But when you come inside, it goes really, really warm, but it's consistent. So just because it's oversaturated warm doesn't mean you can't pull colors and tones out of it. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I
for
do
sure.
love the fact that that Craig leaned into the black and white conversion here and did such a good job bringing out those highlights and shadows and creating wonderful contrast and depth in the image. So, yeah, very well done.
Yeah, yeah, and you can see how his style evolved because I see a lot of not from a standpoint of it being too much, but we see a lot of symmetry in Craig's work, and this is definitely leaning into that. When I so if you were to look at the like composition of this, so it feels very symmetrical, and since you're telling me that this is symmetrical by just the composition and how you're looking at these pillars on the side, obviously the photographer wanted to emphasize the symmetry, and this kind of roof indentation and everything in here is very very symmetrical until this
Right.
until the chandelier, which I know is probably dancing on your OCD nerve right now, right? It's like move
Well,
that.
to be fair, I really like it a lot the way that it is. And I think that part of it is you're sort of like interrupting the pattern, right? Like the ceiling is centered, the walls left and right are centered, the chandelier is technically centered, but the room is slightly askew, right? And I don't hate that at all. I think that the obvious choice would have been to center everything, stack everything perfect, but this is off just enough that it feels organic, and I like that. I
Mm.
do. It's a nice, if it was intentional, right? Like I know Craig said that he wished that he had, but maybe back then, like his compositional Craig had seen something he didn't know he saw, you know.
Yeah, yeah. But it's
But I
meticulous
like
though,
it.
you know? It's meticulous. You look at you I'm looking at things like the placement of these little lamps here versus the placement of the lamps on this side. It's very close, right?
Yep.
This lamp is, just a hair away from that photo frame. It's very close on this side. This one's inside the photo frame. On this side,
Yeah.
it's not so. Yeah, those little, even like this kind of crease in the wall here. These lamps are very close to that point. So if you were to lean, I'm curious, like from your standpoint, if you were to say, like, okay, this shot is all about symmetry. It'd be great if it just weren't for that damn chandelier there. Would you, processing this today, would you just get rid of the chandelier or move it? Like what would you do, or leave it as, like you're saying, just leave it as is, as kind of a point of pattern interrupted, as John Paul Caponegro says, right? What
I
do you
would
think?
leave it. I would
Yeah.
absolutely leave it. I think, like, and we've picked on a lot of the obvious compositional things, horizon lines, things like
Mm-hmm.
that, and we mentioned those quite a bit. But that doesn't mean that having something slightly askew or something slightly off center isn't bad, right? And so in this
Yeah.
case, I prefer, that it looks this way. I don't think that if it was perfectly symmetrical, I think it would become boring. I don't think there would be a left side and a right side of the image. I think that it would just be a center, right? You wouldn't see, the image on the left as you would on the right. So I think that skewing it a little bit is actually an improvement. So, I mean, I would argue
Yeah.
that you don't have to have everything perfectly symmetrical just because it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, of course. And yeah, looking at this, if the ultimate purpose of this shot was for a real estate shot, it was for some entity in Abu Dhabi that needed a shot of this location,
Hmm.
perfect. But if this is more of a lifestyle type shot, I think you could conquer that whole idea of adding something to throw the symmetry off by having a person
Right.
or two people in the shot interacting with each other, sitting on maybe one of those chairs or couches in the background on one
Right.
side, to kind of just add that bit of, this is real. This is not, completely posed or staged or whatever.
No, and I
But
agree, and
yeah.
that's a really good point. I mean, if you're looking at this as just like a pleasing art piece, great. But probably for somebody looking at commercial space, they're probably going to want symmetrical, right? They're probably going to
Yeah.
want you to center everything because that's how they built the room. So very, yeah, very different
Mm.
views. So yeah, yeah. Be sure and
Yeah.
ask your
Yeah.
agent what they want.
Isn't it interesting though? Like when he shot this before the age of Photoshop's generative fill and all those new tools we have. Now, like literally, sky's the limit in here, right? Because if he said, like, if one of the requesters said, "Yeah, I like the photo on the left, but we're no longer really into camels anymore. So could you redo that with horses? Could you put horses in there?" You can totally do it. Or make it bigger. We need those photos are way too small for those walls. They need to be really big in there. Can you do that? Is that something you can do? Back then, yeah, and it would look like, like you did it. But these days you could probably pull it off and say, yeah, it would look
That's
just like
hilarious.
it was
Yeah.
supposed to be there. It's crazy the powers we have now. So
Yep.
versus then.
Yep.
All right. Mr. Stamfley, thank you. And he says it's a snapshot. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
All
But
right,
he never
this
thought we'd
this
discuss it.
right. Yeah, exactly. All right, this Joker's up next. Introducing Bert, his now wife Anna, were my first unintentional digital wedding. Okay, you got to tell us about this. I saw this and I was like, yeah, yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about, right? This one on the left
Yeah.
is Yeah, and this is both of them are perfectly acceptable, but the one on the
Right.
left, I remember shots like that, right? That were like, I don't know. Part of it was like that was just the zeitgeist of wedding photography back then, right? So you were,
Yeah.
I feel like you were processing to what was considered what brides wanted, right? And it was that kind of, slightly oversaturated, crispy, great pose, nice angle, all the things. And then you fast forward to this version, which with taking into account your maturity as a photographer and the tools, this is what comes out, which I like the one on the right way much better. I can see the pants. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It, yeah, it's funny. The original, like when we were shooting those, like I always liked contrasty saturated images, so that was okay, even when I was shooting film. And then we started shooting digital, and I was so frustrated with the fact that I couldn't get highlight and shadow detail, especially like in direct sunlight. Like they would just disappear, and I would just do everything I could to try to bring them back. And so, although, I look at this and I think that the one on the left is a little more spicy and I like the flavor of it, the one on the right is the one that I would most likely deliver because I know that my couple's going to appreciate it more,
mhm.
especially if this was a bride. She's going to want to see the detail and the beading and stuff like that in her dress. Like, that's so important to them. And then, like Ladunarina pointed out, the one on the left, like the water and the sky don't match. Where the one on the right, I intentionally balance the color so that
Hmm.
the blues are more consistent. So that's just my personal preference over time. Um, and it's so easy to do now, but back then it was so impossible. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but
No,
this this
absolutely.
this wedding was the wedding that made me realize that digital was 100% wedding worthy. Um, and because I had left my camera and my digital, I left the film camera at home, which was only about 20 minutes away. Margie went and grabbed it. I had to start shooting the guys with the digital, and I was really nervous. But at the end of the shoot and everything, we looked at the files and went, "Oh, these are good. These are
Hmm.
great." So yeah, we leaned into
Yeah.
it pretty hard.
Yeah, it's really good. The processed version to me, or the not the processed version, the current version on the right. This one feels like compositionally, even though there's more detail here, I can see what you did with the processing on the jacket, and of course matching the fountain to the sky more accurately. But the way that you've processed it, because it's so bright around here, it's so interesting. Still a good shot, but this one pulls me into the face more. I feel like I'm supposed to be looking at the face of the subject. This one, I'm looking at the face of the subject, obviously, but I feel like there's much more weight or much more importance on the other objects. And on the one on the right, I feel like it's obvious that stuff is less important in this guy. So yeah,
Right, and
well
that's
done.
a really good catch because the one on the left, a lot of the highlight detail, like on the fountain and the foreground in the building, it's all nice and crisp and it shows it off really well. But as a portrait, I don't want you looking at those things. I intentionally put a radial gradient on this to mute everything else except for starting at the face and working out. Like that's where in a portrait, especially a wedding image, I want you to look at the groom. I want you to see, his smile, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah, yeah, even yeah, and the details get me, like the detail in the jacket, and in the shirt. Whereas over here we're a little bit blown out.
right.
Here you brought all that detail back. So, yeah, really nice.
And I
Very
edited
cool.
this. I don't know if you read the description, but I edited these originally in a piece of software called Bibble. Did anybody ever use Bibble?
I never used it. I
It
remember Bibble though.
Oh my god, it was great because Bibble was the name of the guy's cat. So every time that you would go in and like drop your images in and it would start rendering thumbnails, all the thumbnails were this thumbnail of his cat like licking its nose. It was hilarious. And I
That's
loved it
cool.
so much. Like it was my favorite thing was to see his cat.
Yeah, because cats are awesome. All right. Yeah. Anybody remember Bibble? Yeah. Sound off.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Greg McMillan has a comment. He says, Troy, I wonder if a slight bump of the whites slider would make the portrait pop a little more. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I'm actually writing I'll reply, and I misspelled stuff,
Oops.
so don't share it. Oh, you shared it.
No, I'm sharing
Oh wait.
Greg's. This is Greg's.
Oh
Yeah.
wait. Okay. Yes. No. No. Greg, you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, the stream compresses the image, so the final image actually is more contrasty than what you see here. It does come across a little bit flat. So, but you're right. You're right. You could definitely expand that contrast and kind of get more of the flavor that you wanted in your image. There's plenty of meat there, and if you go back, understanding that this was shot with a D1X, which is a 5.6 megapixel camera, you could
Hmm.
easily print a 16 by 20 at that and not even know that it wasn't the Z9, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
amazing. The detail's amazing. And range, yeah, you have it
Yeah,
all
that's
there.
crazy. It's crazy. All right. And I'm going to try to get through these as close to one as we can because I have a hard stop today. James Glenny says, took me a while to pick an old photo to rework. So many of the early ones are kind of just snapshots. Just wanted to do this photo of my old cat. All right, here's his original. Can't take a
Mm.
bad shot of a cat. Cannot, especially if your eyes and nose are in focus. It's impossible. So, and here's the. Let's see. Let me go back here. So original. Okay, and then he did a re-edit with Capture One and Affinity. So this is the original, then the original edit, and then the recent edit in Capture One and Affinity. Okay, original, then edited to this back then, and then for this critique, that's the final with a homage to Troy Miller with the border and the key line, no less. So,
I love it. I love
what do
it.
you
I
think?
love
What
it.
do you think of the shot? Try not to pay attention to the fact that it's an awesome cat looking at you. Like, look at it from the photographic standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, photographically, it's really wonderful, right? Like, in our mind's eye, or even in our eyes, like when we looked at this image, it didn't look like the first or the second image because our eyes are going to color correct, in that incandescent light source. So really, the final edit is closer to reality, and it's wonderful that that you're able to use the tools today and bring those colors back out, the details back out in these older images that you might otherwise be like, eh, it's a nice shot, it's a snapshot, but it wasn't what I hoped to get. But
Yeah.
now you can. So yeah, it's really, really amazing shot, and I love it. And I love this pose too. Like, I might steal this and make this a background on my phone for a while. I
Yeah.
just think it's
That's
so cool.
that's the. Can I get one of those treats you got stashed away at your desk? Can I get one? Just one
Yeah,
treat.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And again, here's the original, straight out of camera. Look at that. And then this is what the first attempt was, and here's today.
Yep.
Very nice. Very
And a
good.
lot of those older images are very much the challenge with color over color saturation, especially in the reds, and the highlights and shadows were very much a challenge, especially when you go back to like the Canon 10D. I mean, it was heavy magenta, skin tones were really tough to get right. It was really weird if you shot anything that had red light or warm light in it, it was way overexposed. But go back and grab some of those images and re-edit them, you'll be like, I was a good photographer. I did a good job.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and even if there's not enough data in there, I mean, with today's tools like Topaz Gigapixel AI or
Right.
whatever, you can resize them up and have at it. So yeah, yeah, there's life in them. There raw files. Speaking of
Correct.
life,
Correct.
this is from Karen Sweeney. She says, I can't go back in time after some struggle because I deleted a lot of the older edits. Found this image of a Eurasian robin from February of 2020. The older edit had some Topaz AI in the mix along with Affinity. The latest was all done in Affinity Photo 2.0. Number one is straight out of camera. Number two is that first edit she did. And then number three is the re-edit or the rework. So straight out of
Yeah.
camera, this is what Karen of old thought this image should look like, and this is what Karen of current thinks the image should look like. Yeah, yeah, I love it. I love it. Look at these. Just before, like that one to that one to that
Yeah.
one. So it's a whole different bird. What do you think? What do you think of the re-edit?
It's really great. I mean, this is really the kind of thing I was really hoping to see, is this huge dramatic change, in the image. And I actually had to look up this bird because I wanted to make sure that the colors in the final were accurate, because it's such a dramatic change, right? And I've never seen one of these birds in real life, so I don't know how vibrant like the orange breast feathers are and stuff. And it's accurate. I mean, that's what they look like. So all the photos I looked up, I'm like, okay, this is great. So you took an image that was undersaturated, kind of muted, a little grayed, maybe not as realistic, and then you brought it into what feels like a modern image that you would capture on a modern camera, with that modern tonal range, color saturation, detail. I think it's fantastic. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's a
No.
great representation.
Yep. Yeah, I got nothing to add to that. This is a really cool shot, and I love. I mean, that's dramatic, right? Straight out of camera, way back then. And these are the shots. Like if you go through your Lightroom or whatever your photo library, and you go through it, and you're like, yeah, yeah, I sucked on that one. Yeah, on to the next one. But using today's superpowers to bring it up to this, that's kind of magical. I mean, even sharpness, like if this wasn't sharp on the eye, there's still a chance that you could recover the sharpness and
Right.
make a saleable shot or something closer to what you thought you were shooting way back in the day. So
Right. And when I went and I started looking these images up online, and a lot of the images that I saw were like from Shutterstock and places like that. And like those are images that people are selling, and this is viable. Like this is one of those images where the first two would not compete, would not be able to sit in a library of other images, where this one absolutely can. I mean, if you
yeah.
burn down the wood a little bit and things like that,
Hmm.
like you get even a better image. But um I now I dig it. I think it's a perfect example of how well you can, re-edit those older images and bring them back to life. So,
For sure.
good job.
Yeah. And Karen says she blurred the background twice and then added noise after. Yeah.
Yeah, makes
Very
it
cool.
look natural. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
She's an
All
affinity
right.
photo master.
Right. She has an affinity for affinity.
So lame.
I'm a dad. Come on. It's what we do.
You made those jokes before you were a dad.
Yeah, no. All right. See, here we go. Phil, he says this is from December 2010, taken in the Berkeley Oakland Hills on the way to work. Probably made him later, reworked by cropping, darkening the foreground, grass, converting to black and white. Doesn't think the color added much. Trying to bring out a little more detail in the low-lying fog, make me see why I was attracted to the LE photos of water. Oh yeah, yeah. Maybe I made it worse, a little cramped. I don't know. Let's take a look. So here's the original, and here's the improved version. So let's take a look. There's our original shot,
Yep.
and then here's Phil of 2023's idea of what that shot should be. Let's go back and forth, see what he did. So lost a lot of that foreground, reworked it to different aspect ratio with the losing of that foreground,
Yep.
and pulled that color out of there and leaned into the black and white versus kind of a slightly desaturated version here. We're just fully black and white on this one, which brings us right into these little fog fingers reaching onto the land right there.
Yep.
So yeah, really interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, I love it. I love the conversion. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think that you did a good job, Phil, and the crop. I think your composition direction is fantastic. I would have taken more off the top. I would have cropped down just into that first ridge a little bit, and then it would have gotten rid of those two gigantically huge dust spots you have at the top.
Oh, what, this one and that
And
one?
that one,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Phil, he's
Um,
calling you out, man. Phil's slapping his
Sorry,
forehead
Phil.
right now.
Yeah. But no, I think that this is so wonderful, and there's actually I can see some like more detail in the striations, in the lighting and the clouds and the scraping of light. I love that so much. I think it's so great. I would just literally crop down the top a little bit, lean into the tree a little bit more, but as far as a rework goes, huge improvement, and a great job. So
Yeah. Yeah. Really nice. Really nice. Yeah. And Phil in the chat says dust rules. It's a feature, right, Phil? I meant to do that.
yeah. Hey, better than dust spots on a negative and having to go through and, dust spot prints.
Oh,
Like,
bro.
that was the
No, don't even
worst.
take me back. Yeah, that was, yeah, not good. Or dust spot the negative. Have you ever dust spotted on a 4x5 negative? That's
No.
yeah, with
No.
the set of inks and dyes that you use to kind of get in there and like, and then you print it. It's never right, so then you have to end up continuing the work on the actual print.
I was
So
fast at black and white dust spotting on the prints, but then when we started having to do color, oh my God. I
yeah,
hated printing color. Anyway,
yeah,
that's a whole derailment.
a whole nother rat hole right there. All right. Up next is Eric Pronsky. He says, "Extreme sadness and sorrow this afternoon. I realized this image had much more of a story than what I originally shot. Please accept this image as a tribute support of a place that I love, and it's special that we hold dear to our hearts, and we can help. The sign above the pirate tells a story. Now that it's sadly gone, I took this image. I'm guessing. I think I know where this is." The sign above it, he took this image in 2013 as a snap, and then going through today, he realized it had a real story. He enhanced the sign in the middle, so the businesses that were once there, and the then happy hour sign um, that has a place. So yeah, I'll leave this to the members to read. Let's look at the shot here. So I'm guess yeah, this is in Lahaina in Hawaii.
Yeah.
So here's the original, and this is the rework.
Yeah,
So
the
we can
big
see
difference
this.
is inside.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And this is no longer there. It's so crazy. You know, Troy. I spent a couple of days in Lahaina. What was it, a couple of years ago? Remember we had a
Mhm,
conversation. I was there,
mhm.
and it was beautiful. It's so crazy, and just horrific to think that it's none of that stuff that I was just taken for granted while I was there. Like, oh, let's go over there. Oh, look at this little hut. Let's go have lunch in there. It's all gone. It's just
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jeez.
Well, I feel lucky that I have been there. I've
Mm-hmm.
touched the buttons on that statue. I've got photos of Kira there from 2000, was it 2006?
Mm.
Um, so I remembered it being such a cool place. So it's definitely sad. I think that Eric did a wonderful job with this image, and I love the story. And I'm glad that he picked this image. It's iconic and it's super cool. And
Mm-hmm.
definitely, the ability to like lean into a slightly different crop. He sharpened the image, improved the tonal range, and then the ability to open up those shadows to show the interior of this building, which is so much more important now than ever before. Um,
Yeah.
maybe that wouldn't have been something of importance, previously to the fires and the tragedy over there, but now it seems so much more poignant, right? So don't throw away those images.
Yeah.
Keep them.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's cheap to keep, right? They're really cheap to archive, almost in perpetuity now. So, the compositionally, I think the only thing that I would change on this shot. Let me go back to the other one. So here's this guy. Yeah, so we lost some building on the left side here, so he changed the crop just a little bit. I think what I would have done, I like the space of the distance from our sea captain to the edge of the frame here, but I think I would have
Hmm.
removed this sliver of wood right there. Just
Hmm.
pull that out just to kind of sell it. It's not really adding anything to the overall story of the shot. And I say that, you preface that with if the intent is this being a photojournalistic shot, then change nothing, of course. But if you're going for more of the let's just bring them into the shot and what's the more on the aesthetic side, then I would pull that little piece of wood out of there or clone.
Right.
I guess I mean that'd be an easy clone job, wouldn't it? Just to kind of
Oh
put
yeah.
some other wood on top of it.
Yep.
Yep. So
Super easy.
very nice. Very nice. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Pronsky. All right. And then I think our last, no, there's one more after Michael Reno, I think.
Two more. Yeah.
Two more. Then we got Nora up next. She said she was. This was 2018 in Svalbard, Norway, where we were about to sit down for dinner when the announcement came. A polar bear and her two cubs were spotted on an island close by. Everyone got their gear, headed for the Zodiacs. The water was rough, and our Zodiac driver was inexperienced. Not a good combination. When photographing with a long lens, it meant a shot of the sky, shot of the land, shot of the water on repeat, compounded with a lateral swing. Oh, so she was kind of, yeah, counteracting the waves. The
Wow.
conditions were horrendous, but the polar bears, amazing. Shots number one, straight out of camera. Number two, the original edit. And number three, the latest edit, but probably not the final. Yeah. So here's our straight out of camera. Here's the original edit. And then here is today's edit.
Yeah.
It's so
I,
stark. Look at that. Look at that. I mean,
yeah.
yeah.
I love how Nora. I love how you add, but probably not the final edit. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that attitude, right? Like because our images change with our vision, that change with our experience, and all that kind of stuff. So I just love that you're open to that and that you see that. I think the black and white is beautiful. It's fantastic. I love
Yeah,
the color
for
as
sure.
well, but it's a little muted with the sky and the tones and that's probably just the way the light was at that time. The black and white feels incredibly simplistic, and the graphic nature of the white polar bears against that black background, and now you can see their faces and that little nuzzle and everything. I'm like, that's a winner right there.
I totally agree. Yeah, yeah. Everything you said. I look back at this one, and I feel like it has many more characters, uh, as it were, with than the black and white one, because you've got this. First of all, this hazy sky kind of puts us in kind of a hazy sky mood, right? Kind of
Right.
melancholy ish. Looking at the sky. And then we've got all the colors, the yellows and the greens and all that, and the rocks. And then we've got our polar bear that have their own set of colors in there from being wild animals, right? And then because they're the biggest in the scene, we know that they're the subject, but we do have all these supporting characters around them that's kind of competing with the polar bears, but then you process it like this and you see now this blank kind of sky becomes a supporting element. We almost have three elements now. We've got the ground with no color to take us away and make us think about that moss that's growing on the rocks. The sky, which is very plain, just sky, nothingness, right? And then our
Right.
subjects that are in front of it, right here, that are obviously our main characters, and it's the difference is very stark. Like we're good shot, but it's diffuse in terms of where our attention is supposed to go. And you come here, we know exactly where we're supposed to look. So yeah, very
Exactly,
nice.
exactly. And I would suggest to for anybody that's going to do any dodging and burning is that be very very careful and conscious of like the tonality in the background. Like for example, in the original, if you look at the background in between the polar bear's legs, in between their faces, all the way through horizontally, it's the same tone. Okay. But then in the black and white, it looks like you burned the bottom and the sides, but you didn't burn up to the bear and you didn't burn in between the legs and between their faces. It's too light
Mm-hmm.
in there. And that to me, and this is maybe my image, my judging, mind working. I'm like, I can see your Photoshop work now. Even though I don't see
Mm-hmm.
the original, I know that tonal range the ground should be more consistent. So
Mm-hmm.
just be aware of how you're doing that. Burn less, or make sure you get in between the limbs and the negative spaces. Make sure you make it look natural.
Yeah. The speaking of natural, the edge of the polar bear up here, you see that?
Mm-hmm.
This
Oh yeah, if you zoom
edge.
in.
Yeah, and so that's why I was popping back and forth. So you can see a little bit here on this one, that separation. On the original, not so much here.
Right.
So I'm wondering, what is that? Is that just a byproduct of manipulating the sky, or what? Or is it
Yes.
just natural, just a natural occurring thingamabob?
No, I'm gonna say it's not in the original image, and it's very very conducive to manipulating a tonal range or a contrast range next to another object. So that's
Hmm.
where something like Photoshop or Lightroom or somebody that selected that saw that as the barrier between two objects, and it didn't
Hmm.
quite reach into it properly. So that's where you've got to again be very very careful about how Photoshop is applying that. So one thing that you can do is definitely do your adjustments on a layer and then turn that layer on and off and look at it and see where the changes are happening and make sure that you see that. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
Really nice
Yeah, I
shot
didn't
there.
even see that at first, but now I can't not see it.
I know, right? I know. Yeah, Nora, I wonder if there's something you can do. Because, again, you said you're not finished with it yet, right?
Right.
So I wonder if there's something that you can do to, like, taking Troy's advice to mitigate that line that's showing up between the mama bear and the sky there. Hey, that rhymes.
Oh
All
man.
right. I'm a poet. Let's see. Up next is Michael Rhino. He says, I've shared this one previously, but not as a critique. They're both from the same image. No AI, no sky replacement. We need a little logo like that. Like, like the parental guidance or explicit lyrics, the
Yeah.
tag that goes on CDs and albums or whatever. We need one of those, a uniform one that photographers can add to their images that says, no AI was used in the production of this image. But then again, that's going to open up another bag of worm because, autofocus is using AI. Does that count?
Is it
So
though? Is it?
it
It's
is. It
using
is.
it's using
Focus
machine learning.
tracking.
It's
That's
not using
AI.
AI. It's
That's the
not.
same thing. That's like
It's not.
that's not cow. It's steak. Come on.
Nope. 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 Not even the same. Nope.
All
Sorry,
right,
my friend.
we will discuss this. We will discuss this on a podcast or something. So
We
the
definitely
different
should.
flavors.
Yeah.
The
Well, because to be fair, I mean, AI is thrown around all the time, and it's not always AI. It's sometimes it's machine learning. I mean, what yeah. Anyway, sorry.
yeah.
I won't go there. I, I'm
Don't
gonna
get me
stop
started.
myself.
I know. I know.
Okay.
All right. Michael Randall says I've shared this one previously, and sorry for going fast, but I literally got to be in the car in 5 minutes. I've
Yep.
shared this one
Yep.
previously, but not as a critique. They're both from the same image. No AI, no sky replacement. Almost all edits to the reprocessed version were done in Lightroom. I love this image right now. I do. This image. This image is crazy. So here's his original. Original. So Union Station initial process. Okay, and then this is Union Station reprocessed.
Yeah.
I have thoughts. I have thoughts. I'm curious what you're gonna say. I have thoughts. What do you think?
I think this is a wonderful example of just how far you can take an image in a raw editor. There is so much data, there is so much color. And I know this not from just looking at his images. I know this from like editing my own work. I know that there's a lot of data there that you have to learn to push and manipulate and pull out. And that's what he's done here. There's been a lot of dodging and burning happening inside this image, and that's fantastic because that's great. That's what we should be doing. And so this is a favorite. I mean, this is a hero image, right? This is an example of what you can go from and go to, and I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah. So what do you? So you like both versions of the image?
No, I don't like the top one.
You don't?
I, I mean, it's nice. I mean, my initial thought would be to convert it to black and white because nothing stands out. If I was to critique the top image, I'd be like, look, you need to pick a hero. What's your subject?
Yeah.
Is it the train? Is it the station? You need to do
Yeah.
some dodging and burning. And then that's what's happened in the lower image, right? He's brought some highlights onto the train station itself. The trains themselves have gone down a little bit in tonality, brought some color separation in there. And so now we have lots of spice to look at. We have lots of different things. And I think that's what he
Yeah. And
probably
that
saw in
I
his
think
mind's eye when he was there.
sure. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's what I was thinking. I think I like. Of course, I like the hyper realistic. Almost utopian vision. This is the way I want the world to look, right? This like you look at this is the way the world looks. unfortunately, right? And and this is the way the world looks in Frederick world, right? It's just everything's a little bit more saturated and bright and contrasty, and the clarity sliders
Right.
drag to the right just a little bit. And that's what I love. That's why I love this shot. I think from a practical standpoint, or from a body of work standpoint, this is edging kind of towards that Trey Radcliffe HDR kind of era. Remember we had that where everything was kind of crunchy and a high dynamic range ish. So I love this, but I feel like I want to dial it back just a little bit back towards reality to sell it more. Because when you look at it, yeah, obviously any layperson or photographer is going to think this is a great shot. This is wonderful. But I think in your head, you're going to know that this isn't exactly what it would it look like that day. It's almost like one of those. I forget who the director is, but one of those superhero movies or series, right? That are they shoot them intentionally, process them to be a little bit surrealistic. This kind of feels like that.
Yeah.
So I think if you wanted to be more on the realism side, just to take this overall look and just dial it back a little bit. Reminds me of like some jambalaya I
Well,
had the other day. I was like, oh, this is great jambalaya. It's just a little bit too spicy. I'm sweating, but it's still delicious.
yeah.
I'm going to keep eating it. Right? It's kind of like that. I don't know.
Well, I think what you're saying is completely true and completely valid. I mean, there's unrealistic tones happening in here. If you look at the top center of the arch, the in between what looks like the tubing and like the canopy covering, like in the original, the sky is consistent and gradient all the way across. But then when you look at the edited version, there's weird hot spots in it and things like that. Like it's not consistent, which shows heavy manipulation. If you look at the building on the right, Union Station, like that light falling on that is completely unnatural and unrealistic in the edited version, because the light should be the same and more natural across the entire building as opposed to just heavily dodged and burned into
Hmm.
the center of the station, right? And I think those are probably some of the things that you're picking up on that feel unnatural. Um,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
agree. Like
But I
like I
like
like
it.
this. I love this.
I like it.
Well,
I like the process version.
I agree. I don't disagree. I mean,
Hmm.
there's nothing wrong with vignetting the building within the image.
Yeah.
But just as a creator, as a creative, as somebody creating art and editing that, just be aware that there's going to be a certain people in the audience that are going to look at your images and be like, that's really nice, but it looks fake, right?
That's
Because
what
there's
you
so
don't
much
want.
fake out there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you have to be able to recognize the errors, like where dodging burning is happening. You have to be able to catch those and to be able to make it look more natural as opposed
Yeah.
to heavy handed. If that's your
Yeah.
intent, right? It's all about what's
Right.
your intent. So,
If that's the intent, yeah, like we say, and thank you, Michael Reno, for sharing this. Like we say on the show, or I or we or whatever, the when you're retouching or doing some sort of photo manipulation, the ultimate insult, I think, from a non photographer or even a photographer is to say, "Wow," or to switch it to another art form. Let's call it plastic surgery. Right? So you get some work
yeah.
done, and someone looks at you like, "Wow, that's what a great nose job you got there. That surgeon
Yeah.
did a
Yeah.
really good job on your nose. I could barely tell that you had anything done."
Oh
Thanks,
my God.
right?
You're
I was
right.
trying to
Yeah.
fool you, but thanks.
Yeah.
The ideal
Yeah.
response is there's something about you. I don't know what it is, but you just look amazing
Yeah.
lately,
That
right?
surgery
That's what
is
you want.
barely noticeable. Yeah. That's
Barely
great. Oh my
noticeable.
gosh.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, same with photography. Wow, what a great processing job you did on that shot. It's amazing. You don't want them to know that you did your processing. It's just supposed to be reality, unless it's not, right? Unless it's surreality. All right.
Yeah.
Got to bug out. What's our topic for next week or for 2 weeks from
What, you
now?
want to
What
pick a
will that
favorite?
be?
You want to pick a
Oh
favorite?
yeah, we got to pick a favorite. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Michael
yeah. Thank you.
Rhino. Michael Rhino
I
is the
was gonna
favorite pick.
I was gonna say this shot is obviously my favorite, but I like this kind of surrealistic stuff. But yeah, I like
And I
this one.
think the reason for the pick for me is because it's the most dramatic transition. It's a beautiful image, no doubt. Lots of beautiful images, but I think that it's one of the most dramatic, most reworked of the images. And in this category, reworking is great. So
Yeah.
definitely a favorite. And the topic for next image critique is hands. Hands.
Hands. Ooh.
Hands.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So
Hands
we
are
could
hard.
you could lean into it and do all AI hands. Just do a photo study, a quote image study on how bad AI hands are, and just put a bunch of gnarly hands.
They're not always bad, dude. They've
They're
they've
not.
gotten way better.
Have they gotten
Anyway,
better? Oh,
hand.
okay. All right.
Yeah.
All
Hands.
right,
Yeah.
hands are the topic for the critique that we will live stream on the 28th of August. You believe we're at the end of August already? We're nearly in September of 2023. You believe
You're
that?
like the
That's
fourth
crazy.
person to remind me. That's just evil. That's just
It's
all
true.
kinds of
Like
bad.
something's going on. There's some alien technology at play that's speeding things up. I don't know. It's crazy. And if it is alien, stop it. Stop it. I like it here. Thank you everybody for watching this, even if you're watching it later after the fact. Especially thank you to the folks that are watching it live and participating in the chat. Very helpful. That's the whole point of doing these, so we can have kind of an interactive experience, kind of live-ish with you folks. Remember to like and subscribe to the video if you're not already subscribed to the or to the YouTube channel, the This Week in Photo YouTube channel. Like and subscribe to this video, or like this video and subscribe to the channel, so that we can grow it and get more people's eyeballs on the stuff that we're doing over here. But we'll leave it right there. I got to go pick up a little minion. Anything to leave the audience with, Troy, or the folks that are watching?
You know what? Just get outside, enjoy the sunshine, and Frederick, I will see you tomorrow.
Yes, we are hanging out and having dinner tomorrow. We'll take pictures and share them
Yeah.
with the community. With the community.
Yeah,
All
it'll be
right.
cool.
If you're not a member, of our community, community.thisweekinphoto.com will take you to a place where you can become a member of our community, and you'll love it. All right. Cool. All right. Are you're driving your electric wheels up here, right?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
All right.
It's gonna be
You can
good.
plug into
It's gonna
my
be fun.
charger. While you're here, you plug in,
Yes.
get all juiced up. So I won't even charge you that much. I'll charge you off peak rates, you know?
And so it begins.
And so it begins. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And we'll see some of you in our Friday member mixer that we do religiously every single
Yep.
Friday. And if not, we will see you on the next live stream, which is next week, and some other stuff that'll be coming up in between, hopefully. A couple of announcements. Hopefully, I'll be able to make in a couple of days. Okay, we'll see you later. Thank you again, Troy Miller. And I'll chat with you later today, but, I'll see you in person in a couple of or in
Yep.
24
Sounds great.
hours-ish. Okay, see you later. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.